Alright, so my Tabor City home here today. We are in a project. So this is 2008 Ford F-250, and as you can see, we have pulled the radiator out of this thing. The radiator I have is a factory radiator, and Ford started this where they have the aluminum core, but then they have these plastic end caps on the radiators. And this side, which is the driver's side of the radiator, started leaking down here at the bottom. Did a lot of research on it on YouTube and found out this is a very common problem with this particular design of radiator. So, you know, I actually took it to a guy here in town. He's extraordinarily a handy guy. He thought maybe he could seal it. So he had a tool that pulled back these teeth that hold the end cap on and sealed it. Put it back on, and it just didn't work. It was continuing to leak out of the bottom. And we got to bite the bullet. And biting the bullet led us to this particular radiator, which is an aluminum radiator. It's an aluminum 4-row radiator that I purchased off of eBay. Now, I know people will say out there and go, you should have got a Mishimoto, or if that's how you say it, or whatever. Okay. Honestly, I have $900 to spend on a radiator for this truck, and this one alone, because you could buy the 3-row radiator roughly about $400. The 4-row went right around $599 altogether, paying the radiator and the tax, because shipping was free. It was right at $640 for this radiator. Now, why go this route? Well, number one, that one's junk, and I'm not going to continue to put fluid in the radiator every time I drive my truck. It's just, that's a bad deal. But I figured getting an all aluminum radiator would, hopefully this is the last radiator I'll ever have to buy for this truck. These plastic end caps and their design won't be an issue for me anymore. And I could have gone and gotten, you know, a radiator for $350. That was the OEM. That would have been exactly like it. But, shaking me. I'm smoked. I literally ripped this old radiator out in less than an hour. But, I just didn't want to have to deal with it anymore. I'd rather fix the problem, be done with it, and not have to deal with it anymore. Now, that being said, if you ever order one of these radiators offline like this, there are 2 things that you're going to have to do when it gets here. Amazingly enough, you know, all the holes for all the screws and everything are already tapped and threaded down in here. So I thought that was a really good design perk. The 2 things you have to do is you have to move these rubber bushings over on the aluminum radiator, and then there's some rubber supports here that have to be moved over here. And then once you get that done, you're ready to install the new radiator, and then hopefully this will not be a problem for us anymore. This will be the conclusion of radiator issues. One thing I have found out, which I had thought about sitting on this issue for a little bit longer, but one thing I found out through doing all the research about radiators and such for 6.4 liter power stroke motor is low coolant pressure in the system, number one, can cause blowback of oil and water into the charge air cooler. Number 2, when you have that low coolant pressure and you're constantly adding fluid to it, there is an issue on the front of the motor of a 6.4 where the water pump goes onto the front of the motor where you get air in the system and it starts cavitating. And the cavitation actually eats away the metal at the front of the motor. So once I realized that this expenditure now could ultimately, hopefully, save us a very large expenditure in the future, I said I'm going to have to bite the bullet and go ahead and take care of it. So we're going to get everything swapped over, get this new radiator put in the Ford, and hopefully that'll be the end of our cooling issues. We'll be solid from that point on. Alright, so I do have to make a correction to the initial part of this video. Once I did get looking at the radiator, there are 2 stalls that go on the front of this radiator that I ended up having to take off of the old radiator. in order for the transmission and cooling lines to be attached to it. They came off with no problems. The recesses in here, the areas in here for them to screw into were already tapped and threaded. They were ready to go, so all I had to do was unscrew those from the original radiator. There are O-rings in there, so that are on the stalls, not in the back of the radiator, and they went in there fine. I will go ahead and put the fella who business that I ended up purchasing this radiator from. This is actually a couple of days now since I installed this radiator. It went in perfectly, no issues, fit in there, no modifications, no adjustments. Didn't have a single issue getting this aluminum radiator into F-250, 2008 F-250. So I have run this now for several days. Like I said, been completely happy with it, had no issues with it. Temperature in the truck is running really well. So I just want to make that clarification because I wanted to be as upfront with you guys about what it was going to take to switch over to the new radiator, having switched from the old plastic and aluminum over to the full aluminum radiator. So that's what it took. Beyond that, happy with the purchase that I made. No complaints, fit in there really well. And, I would recommend it to anybody, having run it now a few days. So, anyways, my Tabor City home. Hope you guys have a good day.